All right, on tonight's episode of Python Papi, we're back inside our generative AI course. Let's have a look at what we went over tonight. Now, last night, if you recall, the last thing we went over was the discriminative model versus the generative model. So now we're going to pick up where we left off. Now, what are the differences between the discriminative and generative model? We have some new models marked up here. As you can see, this is our discriminative model here. We have a music data, type of music, going into our discriminator DL model and producing some alternative choices of music depending on the description they got from the input. Then we have generative models here that are going to get entered into this generative models. It's going to analyze some input and then produce some new kind of music. So it's going to produce something new from the input that it receives. It's going to fine tune it, train it, and then produce something new as opposed to the discriminator. So when we're talking about the discriminative model, we're basically talking about everything we've learned so far in classical machine learning and deep learning. Any classification-based model. For example, let's say we're talking about the RNN as a discriminator model. We will be training our model on specific data. Usually data will be our data and type of music will be our input. We will be performing a supervised learning. We will be performing a supervised learning by using a recurrent neural network. And this is a classical model. We have other classical models as well, like the machine learning, name bias, or maybe some other model. So we have our RNN model. We're going to train that model using the supervised machine learning. This is going to get past a specific type of data to this particular model that will in return produce specific types of outputs. Outputs like rock music, classical music, or romantic music. We are passing music to our model, and it's going to predict something like the genre. So this is the descriptive model. Now we're talking about a generative model. It's a little different than the discriminative model. How are they different? First of all, we're talking about a generative model. The training process is different if we're talking about the large language model. The process of training the LLM is a little different compared to the descriptive model. So we're talking about generative models. We're passing our inputs into this model and getting an output. But how? The first step will be using unsupervised learning, and the second step will be using supervised fine tuning, and the third step will be using reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning has recently been used for ChatGPT models, but before that, whatever LLM model had created, they had created on a large amount of data. So for that, first they perform the unsupervised learning, then they perform the supervised fine tuning. So because of that, the model will be able to understand each and every pattern that was there inside of the data. Because of that, it was able to generate an output. So basically, the generative model takes input, fine tunes it, and trains it using various steps, and it produces new data based on the data it got from the model. This means that it is generating new data, and this is basically the difference between the two models. The discriminative model is a classical model like supervised learning, where we use RNN. The generative model uses various steps for training and uses LLMs and is responsible for generating new data. Yeah, that's where we stopped it for the night. I didn't want to go too far ahead without understanding everything we were talking about, so we're going to take it step by step and not try to rush into things. We'll pick it up tomorrow, and I will keep you posted every step of the way. For now, this is the Python Poppy. You guys stay Gucci.